Hi, new admission counselors. We're gonna talk the most important part about your training, how to interview a prospect. We're gonna talk one by one all the structures and the most important parts that we need to memorize. For example, the 5 key points in the interview is definitely mandatory to memorize because that's something that you're gonna ask over and over during the entire day. The first thing that we ask is education. We also find out about their employment, about their goals and motivations, which is going to give us an idea how ready and prepared is the prospect. And remember, here the most important part is listen. We need to listen the prospect. That's going to give us an idea what they want. The prospect is actually going to express what is he looking for. So you need to definitely listen. Is the most important sense in this job is listening. It becomes all your sense, your eyes, your nose, everything. Now, in the second part, what we need to do is evaluate the financially part. And of course, after we evaluate that, we can close with the day. And finally, we ask them why do they deserve to get into the program and if they have any questions. As your admission counselor, you are the one who's going to provide an advice, support, guidance. You need to definitely be the one who qualify academically and financially in order to determine if the prospect is ready to start with the program. Now, let's divide this in two parts. The conversation, the first part of the conversation, you need to evaluate the education, the job, and motivation. The second part, we need to evaluate the financially part and ask why do they deserve to get into the program. And finally, we need to close with a day. That is the flow of the interview. Now, let's talk about education. Education is one of the most important parts because we're gonna have a lot of applications. For example, they applying for a doctorate degree, and when you ask them what is their highest level of education, they tell you they only have a high school diploma. So we need to really determine if the level they are applying, they are actually meet the minimum entry requirements. So if they're applying for a master, they must have a bachelor. There's going to be some cases they have just diplomas for whatever difference between countries. And if you are not sure, you could always ask your trainer if they qualify for the next level. The second part is find out about their job. You're going to talk with a lot of candidates around the world. They have a different background and professions. So you need to ask about their employment situation, if they are currently working and what do they do. How long have you been working? Basically, and do they like what they're doing? So those things is gonna give us an idea, because let's say you ask them, and an African sometimes in the 40s, and you ask, are you working? Are you currently working? And they say no. And then the next question in mind will be, how do you maintain yourself and your family? I have my own business. Many Africans, they consider self-employment as not working. So there is a tricky things here and there. Sometimes you could probably have somebody who say, yes, I'm working. And they, if you ask more about their employment, they tell you they're only doing a voluntary job. So it's very important as where, when, why, and all those questions to understand more about their professional situation or employment. Now, the next question, which is going to give us the most important tip, especially in some closings, is the goals. Find out their motivation behind. You need to really understand the prospect. Some prospects, they are looking to upgrade their education because they want to open their own business. They have a lot of things in mind. They want to buy a car, they want to establish a family, they want to upgrade their position, and they're looking at the startup plan to increase. So you ask, the way that you could ask, for example, is what is your main motivation behind to study this program? Or how do you see yourself in the next 5 years after graduation? And listen, look for an answer that is going to help us understand why the prospect is applying with us, and also remind them why do they place their application with us. Now, we already talked about the first part, education, job, and motivation. Now let's go to the second part of the interview, which is the one of the most important part. Let's see if they could really pay or not for the program. So let's evaluate them financially and ask what do they deserve, and also close with a date. So let's talk about the financially part. Now, before we go into the financially, I know this is a very sensitive topic, and also many of you, they're gonna be sometimes afraid to ask and evaluate them financially. A good tip that I could provide is the way that I introduce the financially part, and I actually walking through in this part is talking about the admission requirements. So after I finalize with the goals and I explain it, well, let me explain you about the admission requirements for your program. There is an application form that you need to complete it, which I'm gonna send it to you today. We're gonna need a copy from your credentials, one ID, a copy of your CV, and finally you need to pay your registration payment. Now, on the part of the tuition part, we have a lot of choices. For example, if you have a bachelor applicant, the entire cost for a bachelor is 7,500. Now, you listen the prospect and you also let them know this is a global fee. We have a lot of options for you to pay in a monthly installment payments. Let me ask you some questions to see how can I help you in this part of the fees. So that's the way I introduce the financially part. And what are the questions that I usually ask? Basically, I need to determine the size of the family. I need to determine their marital status. Are you single, married, divorced? Of course, the family size. Yes, I'm married. Excellent. Do you have children, and how many? I have 2 kids. And right there, I could have an idea. The family size is 4. Now, I ask the following thing will be, is your wife or spouse or husband is working? Yes. So we have family of 4, 2 people with income. Now, we're going to have 2 main cases: prospect with a fixed salary who is working for an employer, and prospect who are with variable income who they have their own business. So we need to evaluate in a different way in this part. Now, remember, once you have all the information, you know the size of the family, you know if their spouse is working, and also you ask how much is the combined salary for both, or their own salary if the spouse is not working, then you are the one who's going to determine the plan, because you are the admission counselor. So you need to advise after you evaluate financially. Now, we have a lot of payment plans, as you guys remember in the other videos. Okay, so we have the payment plan that is basically, we have a flexible payment plans. You could also advise the option to pay in full, which brings a lot of bonuses for you, and of course with somebody who can definitely do it. Sometimes we have even employers who pay for the education of the prospects, and if they cannot afford, then there is another option, which is scholarships, which is a very strong tool to close a prospect. So who provides the scholarship? You are the admission counselor. You are the one who qualified it, and there's going to be another video to explain you how to provide a scholarship. Now, let's talk about the 2 main case scenarios that we're gonna have. The first one was a prospect with a fixed salary. Okay, after you evaluate financially, determine the size of the family, and then combine salary, you could also ask, because some African peoples, actually most African people, they have extended family too. So you also ask if they have an extra dependents to really have an idea of the real family. And basically, your main goal, if they have a fixed salary, as an admission counselor, you need to determine the payment plan. For example, we have a family of 4. Okay, this prospect is applying for a bachelor, and you ask for the combined salary, and the salary is $1,000. Okay, in a monthly basis. So use common sense is very important here. For example, in this case, $1,000 between 4 people, 4 members, that will be 250 per household member within a month that they have in order for them to maintain through the month. So if I ask the prospect to provide me $300, that will be, which is regular tuition for a bachelor, that will be asking him to provide me 1/3 of their salary. So my common sense will say right there, as an admission counselor, my advice is for you to apply for financial assistance. Okay, and the good thing is that you apply in the right time, because we have some vacancy and I might be able to help you. And let me explain you what it's all about. The financial assistance works in terms of a partial scholarship for international students, and that could help you to bring down the cost even up to 40% of the entire tuition. So we can definitely help you to start now. So let me open a financial aid application to help you. That's the way that you could close a prospect right there, okay, for example. Now, let's talk about the second case scenario, which is prospect with variable income. We determine the size of the family. We ask them the marital status, if they have kids, and also in this case, what we're gonna do is gonna be something different. We're gonna determine the capacity of the prospect to pay. So when you ask a self-employed, a businessman, basically ask them how much is their income. Sometimes could be difficult to determine if they have a big company, but if they have a small, then they might be able to give you an idea how much is their average income. So that's what is so important, the first 3 questions when you ask about their job. Oh, I'm self-employed. Oh, that's great. What do you do? I have my own construction company. Right there, you could have an idea already in the first portion of the interview how big is the movement. They might be able to pay even in full. But if you ask, what do you do as a businessman? And they tell you, I say close, or I have my on a small store. It gives you an idea, basically, the fluid of their income too. It gives you an idea. How long have you been in business? I just started a month. Oh, I have been in 5 years already in business. So it gives you the stability also behind. Okay, so that's what is so important in the beginning, to understand what is their employment, and all those questions. Now, in this case, there is another way to determine. You could ask if they have small businesses. You could also ask, what is their average income in a monthly basis. Or if they cannot tell you how much is their average income, then you could ask, you could offer like this, like the way I do. The 7,500 for your bachelor is a global tuition. We have a lot of options that enable you to pay in a monthly basis. Instead of giving you all the options, I'm going to give you an intermediary option that it might be able to help you. And based on that, I can basically advise you which way to go. For example, for a bachelor, an intermediary option is $200 per month within a payment plan of 3 years. Is that something that you could invest in towards your education? And they say yes. Perfect. The next question is, how soon, when can you start the program? Or how soon can you pay your registration? Or you could always ask, the way I'm very versatile, so the way I ask is, excellent, if you could pay $200, this is what we're going to do. Let's get started gathering your documents for admission, and we're going to set up your registration day payment for next week or the end of this week. Are you going to be ready by that time? Yes or no. Based on those options is the way that you go. If they tell you yes, excellent. Then you have a prospect who could pay with no scholarship. That's great. And if the prospect said no, I could pay those my registration. How much is the registration? $300. Okay, I could pay my registration within a month. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna help you, and instead of for you to really postponing your education, I'm gonna give you into a flexible payment plan that allow you to reduce the registration through the half. Instead of paying $300, you could pay $150, but you must do it within the next 5 to 7 days in order to approve this payment plan from finance. Do you want me to help you so that way we can reduce your registration? Yes, Kathy. Excellent. Then we can definitely, put it to that. Remember, if they pay with no scholarship, with a registration of with a minimum registration of 150, you get bonus. So we'll keep that. But if somebody push the enrollment, like, no, I could pay the 300, I wouldn't mind, but I need to do it in the next 3 months. The next question in that is you need to find out what is the holding back the prospect. So you ask them, can I ask you, why do you want to postpone your education, Mr. Jones, for the next 3 months? What is it holding you back? Is because time constraint, financial constraint? Maybe I could help you. And then you listen, and the prospect will tell, okay, what happened is right now I need to make up my budget so I could pay the entire program with no problem. Okay, thank you for being honest with me. I mean, the good thing is that you apply now because we're still having some vacancy for a different option that I didn't mention, which is financial aid. I didn't mention because they are closing their applications in this week. So, but I might be able to squeeze you into that option. Let me explain you what it's all about. The financial assistance works in terms of a partial scholarship for international students, and at the level that you're applying, you can even get a reduction if you get approved up to 40%. So that's going to help you a lot. That's going to help you to reduce your tuition, I mean, the entire cost itself. So let's do this. Let's open the application. Let me help you to apply for that one. You must send me your documents as soon as possible so we could get you started into the option that they are offering through finance. Do you want me to do that so that way you could start your program now, Mr. Jones? Yes. Excellent. So now you have a closing, see? So it is important because if you go step by step with somebody with a high income or somebody who has a capacity to pay basically $300, but maybe is no, they want to postpone it. So you could bring back the prospect. You ask them what is the holding it back, time, money, and then you could close with a financial, with a scholarship. So the scholarship is always a closing tool. We're gonna have a prospect, like I said, with variable income, and sometimes it's hard to really determine. So you keep asking questions. Or we're gonna have people who they don't want to talk about their income. Few of them, most of them, they really let you know, but sometimes because they are in a public situation, they don't want to say it. So this is a way that you could also handle somebody who doesn't want to talk about their income. So you could propose an intermediary option or payment plan, and based on that, work all the way until you close. Because the goal of this interview, on every single interview, is to determine their financial capacity, if they can pay. Now the next step, what is? Close. Always close, because if you don't close it the first call, then you're gonna waste a lot of time. So it's very important to really handle those topics the right way. Now, what is your mission as an admission counselor? Listen, right? We need to listen the prospect. The prospect is going to tell us what they need, what they want, and so we need to really advise them. So the last question, after we evaluate the financial part, don't forget, because it gives us a value also through the interview is, why do they deserve the admission into the program? Mr. John, let me ask you the last question. Why do you deserve to get admitted into the bachelor program? Can you tell us in a brief words, so I could put this in your application, and that give us a value really. So lastly, you ask the prospect if they have any questions, so you could also let also the prospect to interact with you in the part of the question part. So but always leave the question part for the end, because if you let the prospect to ask you questions from the beginning, then you could have a prospect who can ask you, how much is the tuition, do you have an accreditation, when the classes start, and you provide all the answers, but you haven't evaluated financially if they have a job or nothing like that. So here, we don't want you to get manipulative by the prospect. You conduct the interview. So you have a prospect who is very pushy from the very beginning. You are very professional. You let them know. Don't worry, Mr. Jones, I'll be more than happy to answer all those questions. But first, let me understand your case. So talk about your education. See, you bring and calm down the prospect, and you conduct, and you are the one who really need to taking control in the interview. So your mission as an admission counselor, you need to evaluate academically the first part, which is education, job, motivation, and the second part, which is the financially part, which is the core to define if they can pay or not. And lastly, ask them, if they why do they deserve the admission. Now, don't forget, always be closing. The ABC of our interview is always be closing, always, okay? Because if you don't close, then you just have a chitty chat. We need to really qualify the prospect, okay? We don't get paid to have a chitty chat here. You get paid to close prospect to get enrolled into the university. So you need to close with a deadline. You need to send the emails, okay? Check the emails. Sometimes before you let the prospect go, you double check if they have the right email or no, and then you send the necessary documentation that your trainer will provide you and will explain you. Now, what is something that we must remember? The golden rule. The golden rule for any admission counselor, new one, old one, team leader, sub-team leader, is do the following things. First, we need to call, right? That's the first step. Every single day, we must call between 60 to 100 candidates. Why? Now, making 60 or 100 calls, meaning that you're going to try 60 or 100 times. For example, you have a prospect, at least you need to dial couple or three times the prospect to make sure that their prospect answer. Because some people, they could keep their phone away and they miss the first dialing, but if you double dial or do it three times, you might have a better chance to get the prospect to answer the phone. So that's what they're asking you to dial 60 to 100 times with the prospects that you receive, from today, yesterday, the last couple of days, the last week. So always look for prospects to answer, because at the end of the day, the 100 dialings that you do through the day is going to guarantee that you at least get in touch with at least 1/3, at least between 30 to 40 students, prospects they're going to answer. Out of those 40, the next goal is qualify and close the lead, the deal, and add to your enrolling list or e-list between 3 to 5 every single day. It's so important that you add every single day at least 3, no less than 3. If you don't meet your quota, you must come back and finish the quota. Why? Because if you don't add, it's like you haven't do anything, pretty much. At the beginning, I understand that you might take a little longer to add because you're learning, but at the end of the day, at the end of the week, you must definitely achieve the goal to add 3 every single day as minimum at the beginning, then 5, then 7. The graders, admission counselors, they don't add 5, they add 7, 8, 10, 12 per day. So as a newbie, at least start with 3, between 3 to 5. Okay, so that's the idea. Why? Because if you add 3 prospects every day and you work 5 days in the week, meaning 3 times 5 is 15 candidates that you already close with the day of payment. You schedule the day of payment. You know they are very interested, and you could follow those 15. And out of those 15, at least 2 or 3 they're going to enroll, and most likely another 3 or 4 they're going to ask you a little extra time. You're going to have a rollovers, and that's how you create your bank of prospects. And that's how you always ensure to have enrollments every week. Okay, if you don't have a bank, that's when you start getting weak with enrollments. So you add 3 per day, you must enroll 3 per week. That's the goal. No minimum of 3 enrollments per week. That's going to guarantee that you could get, your weekly steady payment. And if you get 4 or 5, excellent. That's the idea. Now, the lastly rule is always program your week. How to program? You're going to learn how to use your calendar. You need to update your enrolling list every day and reprogram the calls and put your notes. You need to learn how to be organized here, because you're going to talk with so many people that if you don't learn how to organize yourself, you're going to get lose track. You're not going to follow candidates, and that's how the way that you could lose payments. So this is the golden rule, guys. I hope you understand. I'm always going to repeat this so that way you could remind what is necessary to do through your daily job. So that's all, folks.